Back in 2019, federal agents did something many thought was impossible. They arrested Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, this was a guy a lot of people figured was totally untouchable. So how'd they pull it off? Well, it wasn't just some random event that made the headlines. This was the end result of a really complex 18-month-long investigation, all designed to get around this huge legal roadblock from a decade earlier. Today, we're going to break down exactly how it all went down. So let's dive in. So this was the big question, right? The massive challenge staring federal prosecutors right in the face. How on earth do you reopen a case against one of the most connected men in the world, especially when most people thought that case was slammed shut for good by this really controversial deal back in 2008? See, to get this thing moving again, investigators knew they couldn't just, find some new piece of evidence. No, they had to carve out an entirely new legal path to even bring charges. The stakes, you better believe they were sky high. Okay, so to really get what happened in 2019, we've got to jump in the time machine and go back a bit. About a decade earlier, there was this state-level case that just ended. It wrapped up with a deal that basically acted like a shield for Epstein and his alleged co-conspirators, protecting them from any more federal prosecution. For all intents and purposes, it looked like the story was over. But for the federal investigators up in New York, this was just the beginning. It was the prologue to a brand new fight.
And here's where it gets really smart. This is the core of their entire legal strategy. The key, the absolute game changer, was shifting not just the jurisdiction, but the very nature of the crime itself. See, that 2008 deal? That was a state plea deal, and it was focused on prostitution charges. The new case, the federal one, that was targeting something way, way more severe, sex trafficking. So by zeroing in on federal crimes that cross state lines, and by bringing in brand new evidence from new victims, the prosecutors could make a powerful argument. They could say, hey, that old agreement, it just doesn't apply here. And that was their way in.
All right, so once they figured out their legal angle, the gears of the federal government started to grind into motion. And you've got to understand, this wasn't some flashy raid you see in the movies, doors kicked in, helicopters overhead. No way. This was the beginning of a slow, super deliberate, and highly secretive process. The whole goal was to build a case that was absolutely bulletproof, one that could stand up to any legal challenge thrown at it. So where do you even start with something that big?
Well, it all started with what's called a preliminary inquiry. That's basically where agents quietly start digging back through everything from the old case files. Then comes the next big step, convening a grand jury. Now, a grand jury is a secret group of regular citizens, and their job is to hear evidence completely behind closed doors and decide if there's enough there to even file charges. And once that grand jury is in place, bam, the investigators get some serious power. They can start issuing subpoenas. Those are legal orders that basically force people to show up and testify and to hand over any documents they have.
There's that old saying, the wheels of justice turn slowly but grind exceedingly fine. And man, that just perfectly describes what was going on here. Every single document had to be picked apart. Every potential witness had to be thoroughly vetted. This was never, ever about speed. It was all about precision. The investigators, they knew they basically had one shot to get this right, and they were absolutely prepared to take all the time they needed to build a completely airtight case. And that brings us right into the heart of the whole operation. We're talking about an 18-month marathon of just gathering evidence. I mean, this is where the real work happened. This is where they built the entire narrative of the alleged crimes, putting it together piece by painstaking piece. The end goal? To present a story to that grand jury that was so compelling, it was undeniable. The investigators cast an incredibly wide net here. They weren't just pinning their hopes on one source or one piece of evidence. No. They went out and found new witnesses, people who had never spoken out before. They worked to corroborate accounts from many different victims to show a clear pattern of behavior. They dug deep into financial records. They pored over private flight logs to figure out who was where and when. They were piecing it all together, and every single piece, it was like a thread being woven into a much, much larger tapestry. And this timeline really shows you just how methodical they were. I mean, look at this. They reopened the file in early 2018. But it takes months, literally months, just to get the grand jury impaneled. The really key testimony? That doesn't even start coming in until late that year. And then it takes another 6 months or so before the grand jury feels like they have enough to finalize the indictment. It was just a slow, steady, relentless accumulation of evidence and testimony. So after a year and a half of all this grinding work, it all boils down to one single crucial document, a federal indictment. And it's super important to understand what this is and what it isn't. It is not a verdict of guilt, not at all. Think of it as a formal accusation. It's the grand jury giving the official green light saying, yep, there is enough probable cause here, enough evidence, to go ahead with a trial. This is the exact moment an investigation turns into a prosecution. So what did all that time, all that effort, that year and a half of work actually produce? A 2-count indictment. Just 2 counts. But don't let that number fool you. These were not minor charges. We're talking about sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking. These are some of the most serious crimes on the books, period.
Okay, so the indictment is secured. Now, everything changes. The whole operation shifts gears, moving from quiet investigation to all-out action. This final phase was all about logistics, timing. It was like a carefully choreographed dance, a plan to get their target into custody perfectly, without a single thing going wrong.
The very first move, they filed that indictment under seal. Now, all that means is that it was kept totally secret. Secret from the public, and most importantly, secret from Epstein himself. And the reason for that is pretty simple, right? If your target knows you're about to arrest them, they could flee the country. They could start destroying evidence. So secrecy was absolutely everything at this point.
So while this crucial document is being kept under lock and key, law enforcement is tracking their guy. They know he's not even in the country. He's in Paris. But they also know exactly when he's scheduled to come back, and that he'll be touching down on his private jet. The stage was perfectly set.
And the location for this final act? Teterboro Airport, over in New Jersey. It's this major hub for private jets right outside New York City. You can just picture it. As Epstein's plane is making its final descent, federal agents are quietly moving into position on the tarmac below, just waiting to greet him.
And then, on July 6th, 2019, it happened. The moment he stepped off that plane, Jeffrey Epstein was met by the FBI. He was taken into custody. Just like that, the 18-month investigation had finally reached its dramatic end. That single moment on the tarmac, it was the clear end of one chapter and the absolute beginning of another. All that painstaking work by the investigators was finally done. Now, the case was about to move out of those secret grand jury rooms and into the bright public glare of a federal courtroom. And that's where a whole new kind of battle was just getting started. And that really is where the story of the investigation comes to a close. The arrest was the peak, the culmination of this incredibly long and methodical process. But it also leaves us with this really profound question that just hangs over this entire story. A question for all of us, really. What happens when justice is delayed? And can a reckoning, even one that comes so late, ever truly be enough?